Canada is buying 88 new F-35 fighter jets at an estimated cost of $19 billion. Defense Minister Anita Anand says the first aircraft is set for delivery in 2026. And she says the F 35 fleet will ensure that Canadian pilots have the long term ability to defend the second largest airspace in the world. Each jet will cost roughly $85 million US. The F 35s will replace the Royal Canadian Air Force's aging fleet of CF 18s. The Canadian government first announced plans to buy the F 35 back in 2010. Now, this was before politics and government mismanagement put a pause on the program. Well, with us now to discuss the F 35 procurement process and ways to improve the situation is Mr. Alan Williams, a procurement expert and president of the Williams Group. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, quite the long time coming with these F 35s, sir. As we mentioned, Canada announced these plans to acquire the F 35 back in 2010. It's now 2023. So, can you please unpack this super long, bumpy journey for our viewers?
Well, it's not too complicated, actually. And it's a business case, maybe Harvard would like to use or some other school, on what happens when you try to manipulate the system. So, if you recall, back in 2010, July 16th to be specific, the then Minister of National Defense took great pride in announcing that they were going to buy the F 35. Now, he announced that they were going to buy it without a competition. And Canada is one of the only country in the world where we have legislation that basically says you must compete unless certain specific conditions arise. None of those were applicable here. So in fact, it was illegal for him to try to sole source it at the time. But even more important than that, in 2010, the F-35 program was in its embryonic stages of development. No one knew what it was going to finally cost, and no one knew what it was going to do. And so to simply say they were going to spend how much money we didn't know to buy something that we didn't know what it was going to deliver made absolutely no sense. And following the announcement, the government made a lot of comments to try to justify it. And having been the person that really got Canada into the program, I was aware that they were all misleading comments. And I began to take offense. If the government wanted to do something that I thought wasn't smart, that's one thing. But to mislead the Canadian public, I don't think there's any justification for that. So I got on the airwaves, TV, wrote articles, and eventually it caught on. And of course, then the AG got involved, and the Parliament Budgetary Office got involved, and the Harper government stopped it at that time. Um, Liberals came in, made the kind of ridiculous comment that they were going to run a competition but wouldn't allow the F-35 in it, which of course makes no sense. You can't have an open, fair, and transparent competition and before starting exclude somebody. But finally, they got their act together and ran a competition, and here we are, 13 years later, having picked the winner.
All right, quite the long journey indeed. A quick 2 minutes left here, sir, but I know that you've released some information on how Canada can improve its overall defense procurement process. Can you share with us these recommendations?
Sure. Well, I think the most fundamental issue to understand is we are the only country in the world where there is no single minister accountable for defense procurement. You know, if someone has children, if you tell your three kids to take out the garbage, likely no one's going to do it. If you pick one particular child, you have more of a chance. The same thing here. We have no minister accountable for the procurement process. And the government cynically sort of bounces the ball back and forth between each minister and complains how complex the process is. Well, it's complex because they haven't simplified it. And if they until they hold one minister accountable, this process will never be as good as it should be. When you don't have a minister accountable, you don't have performance measures. We all know that if you want to improve a process, measure it. And without one minister responsible, you can't measure it. So I think those are the fundamental things that you have to, there are other things, but until you fix those things, don't expect the process to be better than it is.
All right, Mr. Williams, it looks like we've got just about 20 seconds left here, but any last comments or opinions when it comes to the situation?
Well, I think the biggest risk now, frankly, is the cost. This program is 19 billion to buy, but 70 billion to buy and maintain. If you add that on to the over 300 billion to build the ships, frankly, there is no money left over. just to be more blunt, the capital cost of 19 here and about 85 for the ships, that's
Mhm.
over $100 billion, right? There's only $5 billion a year in the budget. These two programs exceed the available funding for everything, not
Mhm.
just these two. So the government has to prove to the Canadian taxpayer and the public that it, in fact, is not just playing a shell game, but if it's going to buy ships, build ships, and it's going to buy aircraft, it is giving national defense the money to do it.
All right, Mr. Williams, thank you for your time today.
Pleasure. Have a nice evening.
We'll be right back.